record? How do I know if it's recording?
I think there's usually a red thing that pops up at the top of your screen if you put your mouse there. If I remember, I'm not completely sure.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, okay, yeah, there's a thing blinking on my screen, at least on the top, that says recording.
And it's had a stop share, right? Or
Huh?
no? It's a pause recording or stop recording, so that means it's recording, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's start our discussion. Okay, so I watched the videos and the Gentlink readings, and here are the key ideas that I've got. The reading was long, and there was a lot of idea that was being mentioned and discussed, but I tried to compress them into 3 bullet points, and they're kind of long. So the first idea was, in order to have a true democratic government, it is essential that education system must also be democratic in ways that allow educators and students to exchange knowledge without special interest or dictation from the government to serve any kind of underlying purpose or any political gain or motivation. That's number 1. And number 2 is community is a significant factor in every individual's pursuit for knowledge. Throughout this pursuit of knowledge, it is best that the community, including teachers, parents, family, friends, school administrators, counselors, the district, or even the local government, to provide the resources and the opportunities necessary to best facilitate the learning of every student, especially underprivileged students. Especially students who come from underprivileged communities. And the last bullet points is that educational leaders and instructional practitioners must take pride and responsibilities for their mission. It's also important to note that effective and outstanding education takes place throughout the academic and social environments, through human interactions, experiences, through trials and errors, through free thinking and questioning, and self-awareness and selflessness. So those are the 3 main bullet points that I kind of compressed in. Do you guys want to add anything, or comments or anything?
Great job.
Thank you.
I think I would also add, or at least for me, I don't know if I got the right message out of it because it was so heavy, but I feel like a large part of it was that it was saying that education in a democracy is kind of like pushing forward what the future of that democracy is going to be, since it's educating future citizens.
Okay.
So yeah, I feel like that might have been a key point. But then again, there was a lot.
Yeah, there was a lot of information.
I don't know. I really like the first key point of the democratic government. Have y'all seen that movie? I guess it's kind of old now, but it's called. Anybody?
Oh, what did you say it was?
I think your video is kind of lagging a little bit, Landon.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll try it one more time. There's a movie called Accepted.
Okay. Accepted?
Yeah. Have y'all seen that one?
No.
No?
Yeah.
It's a movie about a bunch of college students.
Mm-hmm.
Is it not working?
College students?
Okay, yeah. And they didn't get accepted to any other school except for one, and it was a fake school. And they got to the point where they made themselves both professors and the teachers. So they all got to go into a classroom where they all had a like goal and just kind of explore material and teach each other and themselves all about it. That's what I was thinking of this whole time I was reading the article and watching the videos. I feel like that's kind of what he was going for, was an educational system that is 100% fair and unbiased, and where the ultimate goal is to learn and not have any stipulations or anything else upon your learning.
Mm.
That's interesting. Do you want to add anything, Kim?
Well, because I think that your summary was already very good, because I underlined a lot of my reading, and I mean, part of it was I thought there's some part that said pretty good things, which is what the best and the widest parent wants for his own child, that must be the community one for all its children. So it's kind of like a example, I guess, for what you're already saying, for what you have been summarized um, in your 2 point already. So I don't think that is necessarily. But I mean, we can use something to be able to talk for 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's move on to the key lines that's worth sharing. Can you guys see the PowerPoints?
Yes.
Okay, so there was I highlighted a lot of quotes and sayings from the readings, but I picked out the 5 that I liked the most. But you know, the ones that I left out, they're also very interesting. And yeah, so the first one is: the heart of education in a democratic polity must be a commitment to maintaining and expanding democracy itself. And the second one is: democracy is belief in freedom, the basic freedom of mind and of whatever degree of freedom of action and experience is necessary to produce freedom of intelligence. This one's my favorite. And then this one's kind of like a broken quotes, but I try to put that together. But you know, the ideas stay the same. Schools are dispensers of an unproblematic cultural tradition in which the emergence of cultural difference is seen as a sign of fragmentation and a departure from, rather than an advance towards democracy. So that's kind of like saying that, you know, our education system nowadays just the agenda seems like they just trying to produce conformity among students, you know, trying to tell students what to think and how to think, and that being different or questioning facts are bad and, you know, and discouraged and frowned upon. It's some kind of crime for you to question the authority or question the long established knowledge or law or whatever. And I think that's one of the most pressing problems with our education system. Okay, and the fourth one is: on one hand, society claims an ideology for emancipation. On the other hand, society's flawed structure builds dependency on a dominating power that further binds any human potential or growth. This one's also particularly true for the United States, because, you know, race is a very big idea and it's a very controversial topic in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't know if you guys ever wonder or imagine, you know, all of our people, 300 million people, work together instead of dividing ourselves, labeling ourselves in different groups. The government would scare us. I mean, would be scared of us. So I think kind of not necessarily in the education system, but in the social structure and the you know, the social network and all of that social media is trying to divide us, and therefore dividing our power, you know, as the people. And the fifth quote is: the problem with education in a democratic society was that most of traditional education, even where it afforded useful knowledge, tacitly affirmed the hegemonic status of values and idea that are learned by reason alone. the result is that students are rarely offered full body experiences, and therefore, if they grow, it is in spite of education and not because of it. So it reminds me of the direct teach method that we discussed in class. It's like you're spoon feeding information to students and kind of like force them to accept it as facts or force them to memorize it instead of, let them discover, explore, and, try to take in those information as their own voluntarily or kind of like actively. So yeah, do you guys have any quotes that you guys particularly impressed or, want to mention to the group?
I did find one. It was not in the reading that we were given. I actually did some further research,
Mm-hmm.
and I really liked it. Here, I've had it right here. It says, "What nutrition and reproduction are to physiological life, education is to social life." And that is apparent. It was also, at least in connection with John Dewey. I don't think it was one of his quotes directly, but I thought that was a really interesting quote, just because I feel like that is exactly what he's trying to do with this democratic education system.
Mm-hmm.
is feed people knowledge that will, and their knowledge will then later feed democracy as like a positive feedback loop, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have a smarter public, and the smarter public will make for a smarter democracy, and we have to start with a good education system from the ground up. That's going to be our foundation.
Mm-hmm. That's a very interesting analogy between, those two processes.
Between nutrition and education.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, but I thought it was interesting.
No, but it's definitely related to the reading. Like that was part of the main message. And then like I feel like that definitely ties in with the very last quote that's in the slide, where it's basically stating that schools are spoon feeding information, because like how do I put it? The school in the article especially is pushing that schools should be centers where it's pushing forward the growth of knowledge, not just like the absorption of it. It's not, the goal isn't for students to leave school being able to list verbatim what was in their textbook, but it should be encouraging that they're questioning and they're going to be investigating more, because that's how knowledge grows, you know.
That's very true. That seems like the number one, well, not number one, but it does sound like a big problem that we have here in America. We spoon feed knowledge, and then we tell them how to vote in the media by spoon feeding them who to like and who to not like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what's sad is that after we spoon feed them with the information, and it happens when I was in school, whenever a teacher tried to spoon feed somebody's or the entire class information, and then if someone ever questioned her about it or asked her for more or for like factual evidence to substantiate it, to back it up, she would get, I wouldn't say mad, but she would get upset, and almost as if she discourages people from questioning her, and
Right.
I think that's insecurity, because she probably was spoon-fed those information by her teacher herself, so she doesn't have a really solid ground for that kind of information that she's presenting or she's teaching to her students. So it's almost like a generational dilemma. You were spoon-fed and now you're spoon-feeding.
Yeah, she was never taught how to think for herself, so
Mm-hmm.
she's offended by anybody who can.
Yep.
I feel like spoon feeding is a really good way to get things watered down very quickly. Like I'm going back to swimming, so apologies, but I once worked with a swim team, and their coaches for like 15 years were all brothers. The oldest brother was the head coach, and then it went to the next brother, next brother, next brother, next brother, until their swim team was barely holding on. They didn't know anything about swimming. And it's because each brother was only taught by the older brother. They didn't have any new information, and they were watering it down. You know, they were not as good as the brother before, and he wasn't as good as the first brother, and yada yada yada. And so I feel like by spoon feeding information, I feel like that's the same kind of thing that we're doing. Is every generation is going to get that much less than the generation before.
And it will eventually die out.
Plus, with
Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, we'll eventually be all the fat people that are on that movie. Anyway, I'm done quoting movies.
So is spoon feeding a direct teaching?
yeah, essentially.
Well, but do you remember when we read chapter 4 in the other class in CI? And one section that struck me the most is that they were talking about direct teaching.
Right.
And they didn't think that direct teaching was bad.
Right.
They were saying that, well, when you you have to somewhat direct teach in your class some way, because you have to make sure that all the information that so you're doing all the activities. And then when you
I can't hear you anymore.
correct. So in a way that you have to make sure that those information is right. So you have to tell them you have to tell them the concept or like the definitions of keywords that you're giving them for that lesson. And they also say that when you watching a movie, you treat yourself what you learn from that movie. So it's kind of like it's through direct teaching, and they say that it's not bad. And what we've been knowing so far, everybody, not everybody, but like all the master teachers said that, well, they encourage us to do inquiry lessons, inquiry teaching. And so I just, maybe in a certain way, in a certain limit, spoon fed is not too bad, or direct teaching is not too bad.
Yeah, definitely. Because I personally like direct teach. Like, there's nothing bad about it, but it's just.
As a student, I do like direct teach. Like, if I want to, if I want to learn, I will be able to understand it. And if I don't understand it, I will practice, like for math, particularly. Of course, it will be a better, a different case for science, but for math, you have if you want to know more about a problem, you have to practice it. You have to keep practice until you familiarize yourself with the concept or with the problem. Until you understand, get the problem right. So, I mean, I know that I think that 5E or inquiry would be a lot better for science, but for math, to be able to do that is extremely hard.
Yeah, it's like for science, you can do I mean, when we try to design the lesson plan in class, I feel like with science you can create a lot of well, not a lot, but you can easily come up with different kind of engaging activity for students to do rather than math, because maths is a little bit drier than science to me, in my opinion. So it's very hard. Well, math is more applicable to real life. You can come up with an easy real life problems involving mathematics. but it's the interest. Like, how do you spark interest in students? And that's easier for science to do than for math to do, for the mathematics to do it. And I mean, the math department at U of H, most professor that teach 3,000, 4,000 level classes, they literally come in class and just lecture and just spoon feed.
Yeah.
All you do is just copy down. I mean, you guys probably know about it. And, even in class, when Ms. Ikoba and Ms. Matir was discussing about how important it is for you to have the 5E, and important it is for you to, create student interactions between teachers and among themselves. And when you look at the professors at U of H, they do the exact opposite of what we're learning in class. There's almost no student interaction. They just go in, they don't smile until Christmas, they just go in, teach, and then, it's kind of sad, but I guess that's how college is.
Yeah, they're teaching adults now.
I don't know how the science professors do it.
I definitely see where you're coming from, Kim, because I'll also be dealing with math, and it's really hard to make those connections and turn that into a 5E lesson that's interesting, because you've got formulas that you do. It does take a lot of memorization to master mathematics, but I think direct teach, like you said, it's not inherently bad. It's just that it's the trouble of finding that balance between direct teach and inquiry, because if it ends up being like your teacher, Val, that was at your school, who it was just direct teach, there wasn't really any questioning her authority, that's kind of troublesome, because in a democracy, in order to grow, we do have to question, not everything we learn, but definitely question authority, because otherwise we're never going to grow. We won't see what's wrong if we don't question the things that are around us.
But we do, but in class, even in the class that we are right now, not institution, but say in the math class that we took, I think that even Cal 1, Cal 2, Cal 3, all teachers or professors do was just lecturing everything. But they want us to question them. They want us to be able to, do you have any questions? Or if they encourage us to ask questions. So I don't think that it's a problem with question authorities. It was just very hard. I have to admit over and over again that I find it extremely hard for me to be able to come up with a lesson plan or activities that would be fun and motivate students to be able to participate in the class.
And once you master that, it's called the art of teaching.
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, still having a problem with that, and
Okay. Hold on, Nora.
Yes.
It's like the one way for me to check if it's recording is that if I hit on it and say either pause or stop recording, that means I'm recording, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. All right.
Yeah, and I have the recording icon that's showing up in my window of Zoom, so we're still going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I don't want to waste your 45 minutes. Okay.
My time is valuable.
So the next slide is the implications for teaching for our personal, what do we get out of this article and the video? So I got 3 bullets for it. This is totally personal. You can just add or, tell me your opinions. So after I read the article, I think to be a successful educator, I must be able to inform and transform my students into active thinkers, learn through observations, analysis, data scrutinization, trial and errors, and personal experiences, instead of being spoon-fed information and accepting them as true without any kind of accessing those information. So yeah, that's the second part. It is important that my students can assess the legitimacy of any information presented to them before accepting these as true or as of their own. And as my students advance through their academic journey and pursuit for knowledge, it is crucial that I, as their teacher, am there and available to provide necessary resources, guidance, and judgment to shape them into the best version that they aspire to be. So there's also tremendous responsibility on the school, the district, parents, the family, and the community of all students, in which the article also mentioned that community plays an important factor in the children's academic journey. And in order for any individual to reach their full potentials and capabilities, they must be able to explore and learn freely without any kind of political influence, special interest, conformity, or restrictive traditions or practices, or most importantly, I think is most relevant, is also financial obstacles. Because sadly, the quality of your education depends a lot on the quality of your financial situation. If you come from an impoverished community, then you have limited funding for school and hence limited resources, opportunities for students to go to school and, learn or explore the way they want to be. And that's very sad because you can't really, if I'm a teacher in a school district of an impoverished community, there's only so much I can do. Like, let's say for science, you want to get grants for, microscopes to look at bacteria and microorganisms, and you don't have the fundings for it. So the students can only like literally being spoon-fed information, and they don't actually get to look at those microorganisms in their real life forms. So, yeah.
Hello.
What do you guys?
Okay.
Yeah. What do you guys have any?
I agree. It kind of plays very well into this whole communal idea of education. That it's not just a relationship between teacher and student; it's a relationship between everybody as a society. It's up to all of us to play a part in everybody's education, whether you are in school or you are no longer in school or wherever you may be, as well as where was I had a thing to say, but I lost it.
Hopefully it'll come back soon.
Mm.
How should I say this? Did this article kind of teach you about, like your teaching experiences more in Kim?
So for this one, I found it really good. Wait, where's the dialogue? So it's pretty much just telling you that to be able to discover knowledge, but also share your knowledge and your experience with others would help you learn better. So it's kind of like you listen to it and then you teach it to somebody else to be able to understand the material better. Have you ever experienced that? Like it's kind of like when you want to understand a topic a little bit deeper, then you teach it to somebody else. Have you ever done that before?
Yeah. Right, I have.
I kind of do. I kind of did before, and I think that it's true. That it's just some it's a sections that say in the book that it's in the article that said that So I would just bring it up.
What about you, Noor?
I the only thing I think I can add is like towards the last line In order for any individual to reach their full potential and capabilities, they must be able to explore and learn freely without any kind of, essentially without any kind of influence or hindrance. I feel like there was a phrase, I don't remember where I've heard it before, but I feel like it applies a lot to this and basically to the article as a whole, that knowledge is the great equalizer. Because like one of the things in the paper, it was discussing how we live in a democracy, but our society itself, it's not completely equal for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So like educators can play a role in helping lift up those who aren't as advantaged, who are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds. Even though we don't have as many resources for that. But you know, if you give a man a fish, he only gets dinner for one night. If you teach him how to fish, he's able to feed himself for the rest of his life. So it's a lot like that as far as our role as educators. We're trying to help lift up our students and lead them towards being successful, no matter where they're coming from, and no matter their situation. You know, so like how we mentioned in the last meeting, sometimes we're the only ones that are there for our students to point them in the right direction of where they can get resources or where they can get guidance. You see what I mean in like connecting all of that together?
Mm-hmm.
And you know what's interesting about this article is that if you pay attention to the quotes that Dewey has in the article, most of his saying or most of his writings and discoveries or philosophy was created or written in the early 20th century. I think it's 19. I just looked at it, and one of the quote or one of the idea that Dewey come up with was in 1916. So that's like 100 years ago, and for his philosophy to be written 100 years ago and still true today, I think that's kind of phenomenal how he just kind of like foresee it, that
Yeah.
he kind of predicted how society is going to evolve, how education is going to evolve into almost like a battleground for political interest and for government control, you know, because one of the things because when I decided to become teacher and I was inspired by my Algebra 2 teacher in high school, I feel like one of the most important responsibilities that I will have as a teacher, which I always keep in mind, is that I want to teach my student to be free thinkers, like especially as a mathematicians, and especially in a society these days where you're constantly bombarded with information, kind of like almost kind of like how to say it, like down your throat. You know, they're just trying to make you absorb all the information. So if I ever become a teacher, which I hope I will, or which I will be, I want my student to question information. I want them to like be suspicious about all kinds of information that they're presented, especially from the media. You know, because we're easily brainwashed and kind of like lead on to. And I feel like the people who involve in the political world, they're very smart about their words, their information, and all of that. So for us as common people, if we no longer want to be controlled or want to be like puppets of the government, we have to be free thinkers.
Agreed.
It's very hard to do.
Yes.
Before, it's very obvious in the past that the government controls people, and one day that we said that we have freedom of to speak and to do all this stuff, but I mean you know that the government controls you there. You just don't talk about it, or people just don't talk about it, but it's still there.
They're probably listening to our conversation right now. Yeah.
We do have 10 more minutes to go.
You know, I was looking at this thing on the bottom of this slide here, the financial hindrance.
Mm.
We have this friend of mine. He told me that public schools were not always a thing. You didn't always get a free education up to the age of 18. For a long time, if you were educated, it was because you chose to be educated and you had the right family and the money to give yourself an education. And that's apparently when public schools first came out, or when the idea was first made, it made a huge impact on society and the world, because people didn't, just like we were saying earlier about how it makes a positive feedback loop between having an educated public and actually, you know, being able to make smart decisions in government. We've already seen that happen in the past with the very first public schools. And so now we have public schools up through grade 12, but it does make you wonder, when will a financial hindrance not become a thing to become an even higher educated person than a 12th grade education. The world is demanding more these days, but it's not free.
Mm.
And I feel like if in the past you're prevented from obtaining an education because of your skin color, or because, you know, all kinds of things, especially financial statuses and things like that.
Right.
These days, in order for you to go to college, you have to pay like a lump sum to go. And it's almost like that's the way they kind of filter. I don't know how to say it. It's like they're trying to kind of like, well, because I read a quote somewhere. It say that in the past, slaves were controlled by chains, and now we're controlled by bills. And it's just kind of like, when you go to college, a lot of people carry student debts with them, and that's kind of like a chain that keeps them down from, you know, achieving a lot of things. And student debts are big, and I just feel like our education system is almost like a trap, you know.
Yes, they kind of like, I feel like it's a business. It's not about education anymore, but it's about how you can be able to get money out of students. And I mean, there's a lot of us have financial issues, because, you know, not a lot of people that coming from a wealthy family that be able to afford the whole education right. So I feel like, other than paying for classes, paying for books and material for class, there's a lot of money there. I mean, hell, parking too.
Yeah.
At college level, but I think that for K level, I don't think that they have to pay for anything, right? Or they pay, or the neighborhood paying with the tax.
Yeah, but even the disadvantaged neighborhoods, the schools that are there are also not funded as much as schools that are in well-to-do areas. So,
but I heard, I don't hear a lot about funding for a better income neighborhood, but I heard a lot of funding was raised and was, you know, funded to lower income school districts. I heard a lot about it. So I don't know. I don't know how that turned out, but
I mean, that's just like an observation. It's not really anything that I've researched. It's just, when I was going to high school in Fort Bend, you know, there's rivalries between the high schools, And so I was at Kempner, and we knew the other schools from like games and competitions. And so we also knew about Cullen, which is another high school that's in our district. And it's in the rich neighborhood. You know, we know that those are the bougie students. And they do still get more resources, because for a brief time my family had to move to a house that was zoned in that school's area, and they did have more resources. The language programs had been moved there. So there definitely is a disparity between how schools in well-to-do areas are treated and funded versus in disadvantaged areas, even though that's not how it's supposed to be.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And you know what? That actually ties it right back down to this Dewey guy very well, because I have heard that one of the biggest problems about the, you know, where the money goes, I can't think of the word for it, but, you know, anyway, is voting. A lot of the people from your poor neighborhoods, they don't go out and vote. And so the people representing the rich neighborhoods get elected, and then they get to decide where the money goes. And this is just turning into a negative, well, it's another positive feedback loop for the
With
negative.
bad effects.
Yeah. And so once again, if you can educate people and get a wise and intelligent public, then people will actually go out and vote because they'll see the effect of it. Money will be dispersed in a more even way, and then maybe that, you know, we can reverse that cycle. So that's a very interesting point that you brought up there.
Absolutely, because like oh shoot, yeah, now I lost my train of thought. Okay, we're good.
Okay. So I had 3 questions that I got from the readings, but I'm going to go with the third one. At what expense do educators must bear when advocating for or applying democratic education into their classrooms? You know, like, what are the challenges that educators have to face? Because I feel like, well, I want to hear you guys' opinions on that question.
I actually have a quote from the reading that I feel like relates to that. Let me see. Right. So it's not necessarily from Dewey, it's from Green. He was saying that democratic leaders must attend more fully than they normally have to their own life. They have to break with the mechanical life to overcome their own submergence in the habitual. Even in what they conceive to be virtuous, ask the why in which learning and moral reasoning begin. So basically, if we're teachers, I feel like in the paper they were kind of implying that teachers are somewhat democratic leaders. And so our role is to always question rather than just live daily life unquestioningly and just going with the flow. Because we're not only trying to do that for ourselves, we're also trying to teach our students to do that too. Because the easiest people to manipulate, especially in politics, are the ones who are ignorant and who are naive. And so we want to try and prevent that with our students. So that's definitely one of the biggest costs, is that we need to think more deeply about these kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We have about 1 minute left. Do you guys want to add anything? I feel like the most impressive thing about this article is that this guy wrote it in the early 20th century, and it still holds true today. That's very interesting.
Like the video said, Dewey was born in like 1850 something. Yeah. So he was able to see a lot, as well as both world wars before he died.
Mm-hmm.
He missed the Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation, as well as nuclear bomb. and there's not a whole lot of people that can say that.
Right.
He's definitely an interesting character.
Maybe that's because he's been through a lot. That's why he learned a lot and he realized a lot. So he could be able to come with those ideas, just like when Noor said, you know.
Is that your timer for 45 minutes? Okay. Do you
So
guys?
we just quickly stop recording and end the discussion.
Do you want to answer this last question?
I think Nora kind of answered it with the quotes, which is an
Okay.
impressive way to answer it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's see. How do I stop this recording? Do I hit pause recording or stop recording?
You hit stop recording.
Okay.